Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself, because nobody else is listening. When you wake up tomorrow morning, are you going to create the day, or is the day going to happen to you? Are you going to decide what you think, what you feel, and what you pursue, or are you going to spend another 24 hours reacting to whatever life throws at you and calling that survival? Because here is the truth that nobody wants to hear. Most people are not living their lives, they are being lived by their circumstances, and they have convinced themselves that this is just how it works. I spent years studying why some people seem to bend reality to their will, while others, often smarter and more talented, stay stuck in loops of frustration and unfulfilled potential. And what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about success, about manifestation, about what it actually means to be powerful in your own life. The difference is not luck, it is not privilege, and it is not some mystical ability that only a few people possess. The difference comes down to one fundamental orientation toward existence. And that is what we are going to break down today in a way that will give you something you can use the moment you finish watching this. You have probably heard people talk about manifestation like it is some cosmic ordering system where you think positive thoughts and the universe delivers your desires like a spiritual Amazon Prime. And look, I understand the appeal of that idea because it feels hopeful. It feels like there is some benevolent force out there waiting to give you what you want if you just ask nicely enough. But that version of manifestation is actually a trap, and I need you to understand why before we go any further. When you approach manifestation from a place of hoping and wishing, you are operating from weakness, from lack, from the assumption that you are not enough as you are. And you need external circumstances to change before you can feel whole. True manifestation, the kind that actually works, operates on completely different principles. It starts with the recognition that you are not trying to attract something from outside yourself. You are becoming the kind of person for whom certain outcomes are inevitable. Think about that for a moment. The goal is not to get the universe to give you things. The goal is to transform yourself so fundamentally that what you desire becomes the natural consequence of who you are. This is the difference between begging for scraps and sitting at the head of your own table. The ancient Stoics understood something about human psychology that modern self-help has largely forgotten or diluted into meaningless platitudes. They knew that the only true freedom, the only real power, exists in the space between stimulus and response. When something happens to you, there is a gap, sometimes just a fraction of a second, where you get to decide what it means and how you will respond. Most people do not even know this gap exists because they have never been taught to look for it. They have been conditioned to react automatically based on patterns they picked up in childhood or absorbed from a culture that benefits from their reactivity. When you start to locate that gap and expand it, everything changes. Suddenly you realize that your boss's criticism does not have to ruin your day unless you decide it does. That rejection from someone you were interested in does not have to mean you are unworthy of love. That is just a story you could choose to tell yourself. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, the practice of examining your initial impressions before accepting them as truth. And this is not about suppressing emotions or pretending things do not affect you. It is about becoming the author of your own interpretations, rather than a passive consumer of whatever narrative your unconscious mind generates. Here is where this connects to something deeper that the psychologist Carl Jung spent his entire career exploring. Jung understood that we do not just have one self, we have multiple parts, and many of them are operating outside our conscious awareness. He called the hidden parts of ourselves the shadow, and the shadow contains everything we have rejected, suppressed, or been taught to be ashamed of. Your anger is in there, your ambition is in there, your sexuality and your hunger for power and your grief and your fear are all in there. And here's what most people miss. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your unlived potential. When you refuse to acknowledge these parts of yourself, they do not disappear. They just start running your life from behind the scenes. You find yourself self-sabotaging, and you do not know why. You keep attracting the same toxic relationships over and over. You procrastinate on the things that matter most and waste hours on distractions that leave you feeling empty. This is not weakness of will. This is your unconscious mind trying to get your attention, trying to force you to deal with what you have been avoiding. The path to real power runs directly through the territory you have been trying to circumnavigate. So what does this mean practically? It means that before you can manifest the life you want, you have to be willing to meet yourself fully, including the parts you find shameful or scary. You have to sit with your anger and ask it what it needs, instead of numbing it with food or social media or whatever your particular escape is. You have to examine your jealousy and recognize that it is pointing toward desires you have not given yourself permission to pursue. Every uncomfortable emotion is a messenger, and when you shoot the messenger, the message just keeps coming back louder and more disruptive. Let me tell you about a client I worked with. We will call him David. David came to me because he had been stuck at the same income level for 7 years despite working in an industry where advancement was definitely possible. He had tried everything: vision boards, affirmations, networking events, even a few different business coaches. Nothing moved the needle. When we started digging into his history, something interesting emerged. His father had been a successful businessman who had also been emotionally absent, prioritizing work over family to the point where David associated financial success with abandonment and being a bad person. David's unconscious had made a deal that he was not aware of. Stay small financially and you get to believe you are a good man, unlike your father. Every time he got close to a breakthrough, some part of him would sabotage it to keep that belief intact. This is the kind of invisible architecture that runs most people's lives, these silent contracts and buried beliefs that create invisible ceilings. Until David was willing to examine his relationship with his father and integrate those complex feelings, no amount of positive thinking was going to change his financial reality. The external circumstance was just a mirror reflecting his internal landscape. Now I want to introduce another layer to this because I know some of you are thinking that all this sounds very soft, very therapeutic, maybe not aligned with the competitive realities of the world you are trying to succeed in. And I hear you, I do. We live in a world where other people are pursuing their interests, sometimes in direct opposition to yours. Understanding psychology and doing shadow work does not mean becoming naive about power dynamics. In fact, the opposite is true. The more clearly you see yourself, the more clearly you see others, and that clarity is strategic advantage. There is a reason why texts on strategy and power have survived for thousands of years. From Sun Tzu to Machiavelli, thinkers who understood human nature at its most raw have provided maps for navigating competitive environments. Now, I am not suggesting you become manipulative or harm others for personal gain. That path leads to isolation and the kind of hollow success that feels like prison. But I am suggesting that understanding how power actually operates, rather than how we wish it operated, is essential for anyone serious about shaping their reality instead of being shaped by it. Here is a principle that transformed how I move through the world. In any interaction, the person who needs the outcome less has more power. This is not cynical. It is physics. When you are desperate for someone to like you, to hire you, to love you, that desperation communicates itself in 1,000 subtle ways. Your voice changes, your body language shifts. You say things you do not mean and agree to conditions you should reject. But when you are genuinely okay either way, when you have cultivated an internal abundance that does not depend on any particular external result, you become magnetic in a way that actually increases your chances of getting what you want. The paradox is real. This is where the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control becomes incredibly practical. Epictetus taught that we should focus our energy entirely on what we can control, our own judgments, desires, and actions, and release attachment to what we cannot control, which is basically everything else, including other people's decisions and external outcomes. When you truly internalize this, not just as a nice idea, but as an operating system, you stop wasting emotional energy on things that are not up to you, and you become ferociously effective at the things that are. You show up to the interview focused on giving your best, rather than obsessing over whether you will get the job. You have the difficult conversation focused on speaking your truth, rather than trying to control the other person's response. But here is where most people get the Stoics wrong. They think detachment means not caring, and that is a fundamental misunderstanding. The Stoics cared deeply, they just did not let their caring make them stupid. You can want the job intensely and simultaneously be at peace with not getting it. You can love someone fully while accepting that they might leave. This is mature desire. Desire that does not have a death grip on outcomes, and it is infinitely more powerful than the clingy wanting that characterizes most people's approach to life. The monk who wants nothing and the person who is drowning in attachment are both out of balance. Mastery lives in the middle. So how do you actually build this internal abundance? This unshakable foundation that allows you to move through the world with genuine power. It starts with what I call identity level work, changing not just what you do, but who you believe yourself to be. Most people try to change their behaviors while leaving their identity intact, and that is like trying to run new software on an operating system that keeps crashing. If deep down you believe you're the kind of person who always struggles with money, no money-making strategy will work for long because you will unconsciously sabotage it to stay consistent with your self-image. The self-image always wins. Here is a tool you can start using today, and I want you to actually do this, not just nod along and forget about it. Take out your phone or a piece of paper and complete this sentence 10 different ways. I am the kind of person who blank. Do not filter yourself, just write whatever comes up. I am the kind of person who always procrastinates. I am the kind of person who gets anxious in social situations. I am the kind of person who works hard but never gets ahead. Whatever your honest beliefs are, get them on paper so you can see them. These statements are running your life, whether you acknowledge them or not. Now here is the powerful part. For each limiting statement, I want you to write a new one that represents who you are becoming. Not who you wish you were, not some fantasy version of yourself that feels unbelievable, but the next level of your evolution that you can actually stretch into. If you wrote, "I am the kind of person who always procrastinates," your new statement might be, "I am becoming someone who takes immediate action on priorities." The word becoming is important because it acknowledges where you are, pointing toward where you are going. It is believable to your unconscious mind in a way that sudden declarations are not. But changing beliefs is not enough on its own. You have to give your unconscious mind evidence that the new identity is real, and you do that through action. Every time you act in alignment with your new identity, you're voting for the person you want to become. James Clear talks about this in terms of habit formation, but it goes much deeper than habits. Every action is a statement about who you are, and your unconscious mind is always watching, always tallying votes. When you say you are becoming someone who takes action, and then you sit on the couch scrolling social media instead of doing your work, that is a vote against your new identity. When you push through the resistance and do the thing anyway, that is a vote for it. This is why I tell people that confidence is not something you find, it is something you build through accumulated evidence. You do not wait until you feel confident to take action. You take action until you feel confident. The feeling follows the behavior, not the other way around. This might be the most counterintuitive and most important principle I can share with you. Your brain is not going to give you the green light. You have to move while the light is still red and trust that the evidence you create will reshape your emotional landscape over time. It always does for those who persist. Let me bring this back to manifestation because I know that is why many of you are here. When you have done the shadow work to integrate your unconscious, when you have identified and started rewriting your limiting identity statements, when you are taking daily action aligned with who you are becoming, something almost magical happens. Your perception of reality changes. You start noticing opportunities you would have missed before because your brain is now tuned to a different frequency. People respond to you differently because you are carrying yourself with an energy that they cannot quite name, but definitely feel. Synchronicities increase because you are moving through the world in alignment with your authentic direction rather than scattered in 1,000 contradictory impulses. This is not mystical. This is how attention and perception actually work. Your brain is filtering millions of bits of information every second, and only letting a tiny fraction into your conscious awareness. What determines what gets through? Your beliefs, your expectations, your current focus. When you change those internal settings, you literally change what you see and what you can respond to. The opportunity was always there, you just could not perceive it through the fog of your old programming. This is what people mean when they talk about raising your vibration. It is not some new age abstraction. It is a practical shift in your filtering system. But I want to be clear about something because I see a lot of spiritual bypassing in the manifestation community. You cannot just think your way to a new life. You have to become it through action, through confrontation with resistance, through showing up on the days when you do not feel like it. The universe does not reward wishes. It rewards commitment. It rewards the person who keeps going when the initial excitement fades and reality feels hard and nothing seems to be working. That is when most people quit, and that is exactly when the real transformation begins for those who stay. I think of it like going to the gym. You do not get stronger by thinking about lifting weights. You get stronger by actually lifting weights, repeatedly, progressively, through the discomfort. And yet so many people approach their mental and spiritual development like they can skip the reps and just visualize the results. Your mind is like any other muscle. It needs to be trained through actual exertion, through doing hard things, through expanding your capacity, by operating at the edge of your current limits. The soft approach produces soft results, and I do not think that is what you want, or you would not still be watching. Let me give you another framework that has been transformational for my clients and for my own life. I call it the 333 rule. When you wake up in the morning, before you look at your phone, before you engage with anyone else's agenda, you spend 3 minutes in visualization, seeing yourself moving through the day as your highest self would, feeling the emotions of already having what you are working toward. Then you identify the 3 most important actions that will move your life forward that day, not the most urgent, not the easiest, but the most important. And you commit to spending at least 30 minutes on your highest priority before doing anything else. This sounds simple, but most people will not do it, because most people have given their mornings away to reactive mode. They wake up and immediately check email, immediately scroll, immediately let other people's priorities become their own. By the time they think about what they actually want to accomplish, their attention is scattered and their energy is depleted. The morning is when your mind is freshest, when your willpower is highest, when you have the most capacity for focused work. Giving that away is like showing up to a race and handing your opponent a head start every single day. The visualization component is not about wishful thinking. It is about priming your brain for the day you intend to have. When you vividly imagine yourself handling challenges with composure, making progress on meaningful work, interacting with others from a place of strength rather than need, you are literally rehearsing those neural pathways. Athletes have known this for decades. The brain cannot fully distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience. So visualization creates real neurological changes that make the behaviors more likely to occur. You are not manifesting from desperation. You are programming from intention. Now I want to address something that might be happening for some of you right now. There is a voice in your head that is resisting this, telling you that you have heard this before, that it will not work for you, that your situation is different. I want you to recognize that voice for what it is, the guardian of your current identity, the part of you that is terrified of change, even when change is exactly what you need. That voice is not truth. It is fear wearing the mask of wisdom. It sounds reasonable because it has had years of practice constructing arguments for why you should stay small, stay safe, stay familiar. Here is what the voice does not want you to know. The discomfort you feel when you consider changing is actually much smaller than the discomfort you will feel if you stay the same. The anxiety of growth is temporary. The regret of stagnation is permanent. Every person I have ever worked with who broke through to a new level of success or fulfillment had to push past that voice, had to act in spite of it rather than waiting for it to give permission. The voice never gives permission. Growth happens when you stop asking for it. I want to leave you with something that you can carry with you from this moment forward. A touchstone that will help you navigate whatever challenges are waiting for you. The question is not what do I want, but rather who do I need to become to create what I want as a natural byproduct. When you focus on wanting, you stay in lack. When you focus on becoming, you step into power. Every choice you make today is either building the person who achieves your vision or building the person who keeps dreaming about it. There is no neutral ground. You are always becoming something. The strong do not manifest comfort. They manifest control. Not control over others, not control over external circumstances, but control over their own minds, their own interpretations, their own responses to whatever life presents. This is the only control that matters, and it is the only control that actually exists. When you have it, you become adaptable, resilient, creative in the face of obstacles. When you do not, you are a leaf in the wind, blown wherever external forces dictate, always hoping the next gust takes you somewhere nice. Starting today, I want you to practice one thing. Catch yourself in the gap. When something happens that triggers a reaction, see if you can pause before responding and ask yourself, is this reaction serving the person I am becoming? Sometimes the reaction is appropriate and you proceed. Sometimes you will realize you are about to act from an old pattern that no longer serves you, and in that moment of recognition, you have the power to choose differently. This is the muscle of self-mastery, and like any muscle, it grows stronger with use. Start small, be patient with yourself, but start today, because tomorrow the gap will be a little harder to find. You now have what you need. The only question is whether you will use it, or whether you will watch another video looking for the secret you already know. The secret is that there is no secret. There is only decision and action, repeated until the compound effect transforms your life in ways your current self cannot fully imagine. The person you could become is waiting for you to make the first move. Do not keep them waiting any longer.